Welcome. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to wherever you're joining us from today. Thank you for joining the Microsoft 365 Community Conference Workshop Preview Series. And this whole shebang is powered by our strategic partner, B Techly. This is our final week of our 3-week run. Every Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we've been sharing highlights and sneak peeks and previews of the workshops being offered at the main event in Orlando in April. If you're watching live and you'd like to discover more things about this preview series, we've got a QR code up there, and go to the link on that QR code, and we'll have the full schedule for this preview series. After we're finished with the workshops, we'll continue on with series and topics that will be focused on at M365 Community Conference. We'll have panels from Microsoft speakers and community speakers discussing the different topics and the future of the IT world here. So now, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our first presenter this morning, the founder of Voitanos and 21-year Microsoft.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining me today. I'm looking forward to sharing with you a little bit of a preview of my workshop that I'm doing at the M365 Community Conference coming up in Orlando in April that I hope to see you join me in. I'm going to go through some of the slides here, kind of cover some high level of the things that are the big key takeaways from my workshop, and what kind of help you make a decision if this is a good workshop and fits for you. Yeah, so these are my slides. So I'll go ahead and just kick this off. So one of the things that I see is my general theme with this before I get started is that one of the things that I see a lot of customers get confused about is the different options that are available for creating custom agents in Microsoft 365 Copilot. There's lots of different options, but what we see is that a lot of one of them seems to get kind of missed by a lot of customers, and they are surprised to learn about it. That's the one I'm going to focus on here. I do want to just say one thing before I get started with this, is that there is no one size fits all, and it is not as easy as just kind of looking at your options and saying, well, is this the one I should use, or is this the one I should use? And it always comes down to a conversation to understand what is possible and what you're willing to trade off to get to go with one direction, or if you end up going with a different direction, and what the trade-offs are if you go in that other direction. It also is going to have a big impact on your decision, just trying to decide on who's going to be using your agents, who are the ones going to be creating them, how many people are going to be working on them, how many people are going to be consuming them, etc. So it's not just a very simple oh, you need to do this. Let me kind of start with a little bit of where I like to go with this. I'm jumping around through some of my slides that I use that I'm going to use for my workshop, and I'm sure there'll be some updates to it as well by the time time comes around. I'd like to start off though with just some core concepts when it comes to Microsoft 365 Copilot, because I find that these are things that a lot of people end up missing. And what's really important, I think, when you're trying to learn how to do something, is if you understand how something works, then you have a better understanding of where are the dials and switches and knobs and places that I can customize and extend it for my business scenario, and just be able to make a better decision on comparing the different options that I have that are available to me. So for some people, I know this may be a bit of a very much an overview, but I'm just going to go through some of these things kind of quick. This is one of the ones I'm going to go through very quick. A big thing that I think that everyone really needs to understand when you're talking about building custom agents is really what is prompting and what is knowledge. I guess one thing we could start with too is, why do I need an agent? Why would I even need to create a custom agent? What's the use of it? Let me start there actually. So when it comes to Microsoft 365 Copilot, we get a default agent. So when you go to Copilot, either in the browser or you go to it in the app inside of Microsoft Teams, and you ask it a question, help summarize my meetings coming up today, tell me what my to-dos are, stuff like that. Think of that as the default agent. And that's just kind of the basic way that Microsoft has created a kind of all-purpose agent that knows how to do a whole bunch of stuff, but it's not an expert at anything or any specific scenario. So think about it if I had a question about doing formulas in Microsoft Excel, would I show up at the front desk at Microsoft and ask the person at reception going, I need help doing the concatenate and the VLOOKUP? And that person's gonna be like, what? I know the Excel people are in this building over here. Well, no, what you want to do is you want to speak to somebody who's more of an expert at that one scenario. That's where you'd want to create a custom agent, where I have a specific business scenario and I want to be able to handle that business scenario in a customized agent. So for example, another example, if I want to create like a part-time off or personal time off request, vacation request, holiday request, whatever you're going to call it, you wouldn't go to a general HR agent. You want to go to the PTO request agent who's going to understand how to coach you through that, making sure that you've submitted the important information, you've followed the corporate policy around requesting time off and things like that. Excuse the cough. So what we want to do is, that's why we want to create custom agents, is because we can have that more kind of focused experience with Copilot, with our user interacting with Copilot, and not just some generic thing. So I like to start off with prompting and knowledge. So what is prompting? Well, all chatbots work the same way, from Copilot to ChatGPT to Anthropic's Claude or Gemini, Perplexity, you name it, all of them. So a prompt is essentially, I'm going to submit my question or my prompt over to the chatbot. What the chatbot does is internally, it's got what are called system instructions or system prompt. And those are things that we don't have access to. We can't see those. Those are the things that you've heard where, Microsoft has done it with Copilot and all the other ones have done it as well, that says you should never respond to somebody who is asking how to do something really bad or how to do something illegal. It's those kind of ground rules. Make sure you greet them warmly. Make sure that you act in a professional manner. We can't control those different instructions. We then go through and it will then, so when the prompt, when the prompt is sent over to the language model by the chatbot, it's going to include the system prompt at the top and then our prompt after it. All right. Now, what makes Copilot a little more interesting here is that you can see here on my slide is that you have this section here that says memory and RAG data. So what this is that this is when I ask Copilot, hey, summarize my meetings today, Copilot knows before it sends summarize my meeting today over to the language model, like GPT-5 or whatever's being used, it first is going to reach out and it's going to say, let's go do a query against Andrew's calendar and find all of his meetings today. And so it collects all that data. So when the prompt goes over to the language model, it's going to have the system instructions, then it's going to have a bunch of context about my meeting, and then my human prompt is going to be at the bottom so that the language model can summarize and rationalize over that information to give me back something a little more actionable. What's cool about this is that we also have the ability, when we're creating our own custom agent, is that we can inject our own agent's instructions before in every prompt that's going to be sent across. So I could say something like in a PTO request agent for doing, again, vacation requests or holiday requests for time off, I could say that here's what you're doing. You're all about helping the user submit a part-time off personal time off request, PTO request. So we need to know where they're going, when are they leaving, how long are they going to be gone, and then anything else that is relevant to what they're doing, right? And we're going to then say, once you've collected that information from the user, you then want to compare what they submitted against the corporate policy, make sure it falls within the corporate policy. We then need to check and see, does the user have the available time to take that amount of time off? And then furthermore, at the very end, it says we can also suggest to them an itinerary for where they're going. Copilot itself could do that, but that's a lot of additional instructions. So by having a custom agent, all that stuff is already baked in, and we know all the users are going to get the same general experience here. So, and then there's also a concept over here on the right-hand side where we talk about knowledge, and this is where you've got the foundational knowledge that the language model has access to. This is the stuff that the model gets when it was initially trained. When we've heard how long it takes to train models like GPT-4, GPT-5. That's the foundational knowledge that the model has. It's not real-time data. It's a point in time. What Copilot has to offer is that Copilot also has the ability to access knowledge sources within Microsoft 365, like Microsoft Graph and my calendar and my email, or documents in SharePoint and in OneDrive, stuff in Dynamics, stuff in other sources. Let's just say that. But furthermore, you see that orange box there where it says my agent's knowledge. When I have a custom agent, I can also add it additional knowledge. So I could tell it, hey, I only want it to use the corporate policy defined in this Microsoft Word document in SharePoint, or I want to make sure that it only is going to recommend an itinerary based on content from tripadvisor.com. So I can actually specify and coach it with those different instructions as well. So when you look at Copilot as a whole, this is a big piece here where we're going to start to deviate on like what your options are, is that on the left-hand side, this piece you see here, you've probably seen it before. It doesn't have a name, but I like to refer to this as just the Copilot stack, right? This is the Microsoft 365 Copilot stack. This is what Microsoft has created to implement Copilot. And like I said, all the chatbots, they basically have a similar kind of a setup. You've got the user experience at the top, which is where the user interacts with the chatbot. And you've got the foundational model down here at the very bottom. And the foundational model is the language model that does, I don't want to say all of the work, but it does all of the AI related work, right? It does the summarization and rationalization of the content, drawing relationships and all that stuff. The real brains behind it, though, is this thing called the orchestrator. And that is the app that Microsoft has created that makes Copilot different from all of the other competitors. And likewise, the reverse is true, where that's the orchestrator that like ChatGPT has. That's what makes them different. The orchestrator's job is what's going to add all the additional business rules. So it knows that when I ask it, hey, I want to know about my upcoming meetings that I'm holding. What it does then is the orchestrator knows how to go out to knowledge that it has access to in Microsoft Graph to get all of my different calendar items that are coming. It also has the ability to run different skills. So we've heard these referred to as like tools or plugins. This is where we don't have access to like real-time data, but we can go get data that is not native to 365, but maybe you can get data that's outside of Microsoft 365. Like maybe it's going to reach out to TripAdvisor, or it's going to go get stock quotes or the current weather for where I'm going. And then there's also this autonomy capability, which is a big area that Microsoft is focusing on. And that's where we can have like self-attended, like things can run on their own, or they can have agents talking to agents. Once the orchestrator gets all that information, he again can send it down to the foundational model, which will send it, rationalize it and send it back to the user. The key thing I want you to take away from here is that this is like the out-of-the-box Copilot experience. But what Microsoft has done is they've given the ability to us to create our own custom instance of it. So you see that picture over here on the right looks very similar to the one on the left. It is the same picture, because what we're doing is we're basically creating a scenario-specific implementation of the default Copilot agent that we get in the Microsoft 365 Copilot experience. The default agent can talk to our agents that we create, or we can run these in an immersive experience where they just run all on their own. All right. Now, what Microsoft does is they give us a couple different ways of creating these different agents. So we have the ability, actually, one thing, let me back up real quick. When I create these different agents, the thing is that I want you to really pay attention to here is that this picture, as I said, it looks very similar to this. It's because these agents that we can create are extending the Microsoft 365 Copilot stack, this thing right here. So fundamentally, I'm not writing any code. I'm just, think about it like I'm coaching it and I'm putting certain tools in its toolbox or removing certain tools from its toolbox. When I come over here and I look at the different options that I have for creating agents inside of for Microsoft 365 Copilot, it boils down to two big categories. One category that you see on this left side is the Microsoft Copilot extensibility option. And this is where the agents that I'm talking about. This is where I want to have an agent that is going to coach how Microsoft 365 Copilot is going to work through custom instructions, custom knowledge, or removing knowledge that it has access to, or giving it additional skills. The scenarios, the options that Microsoft presents range from the simplest option in like SharePoint agents all the way over to the more powerful options of Copilot Studio and creating declarative agents using VS Code and the Agents Toolkit for Visual Studio Code. So SharePoint agents, less skill is needed, but also the less features you have access to. You can only access content inside of SharePoint and document libraries. Agent Builder, that's the way we can create agents inside of Copilot, like through the Copilot experience. And it gives us a little bit more than what we can do with SharePoint agents, but we can't do like everything that's available to us in the platform. Then we have Copilot Studio. And this is the part where I guess I got a bit of a bone to pick with Microsoft, or where you're going to see where my workshop is going to be a little bit different, is that Microsoft tends to only really focus on Copilot Studio and all their marketing stuff. And I think it's a little bit disingenuous, to be frank. Your option of creating agents is not limited just to Copilot Studio. There's a lot of things that Copilot Studio can do, but there's also a lot of things that you have to do or that you assume that you may not want to deal with your agents. For example, Copilot Studio may not be the best tool for the people who are creating your agents. If there are a bunch of developers, like full code or pro code or code first style developers, this may not be what they want. They may want a really native like CI and CD process with good source control integration and a good software development lifecycle. I understand Copilot Studio offers that, but it's not what you get when you're more of an engineering kind of a mindset. You've got a more pro code first mindset versus like a low code or a no code option. The other option we have available to us in extending M365 Copilot, this is the one that I think Microsoft does a really poor job of pitching to people, or at least making sure customers are aware of it as an alternative to Copilot Studio. And in this option, we can do pretty much the Venn diagram between Copilot Studio and declarative agents is there's a huge overlap between the two of that we can do the same things. But then there's a lot of places too where one can do stuff that the other one can't do and vice versa, right? And it's not a perfect decision. When you build a declarative agent with Visual Studio Code and the Agents Toolkit using these declarative agents, all you're doing is writing JSON and YAML as part of your coding experience. So for me, I say that's low code because I've seen what we do in the Power Platform. That's JSON, YAML, and there's a lot of point clicky kind of stuff. But it also is very easy to go through and to take advantage and can do the same kind of controls using JSON and YAML and just text files for your instructions without writing any code. In fact, declarative agents, you can't write any code. You don't write any code for this. There's nothing to compile in a declarative agent. It's just a tool that is more what you would find most developers would start with and would prefer, right? The thing that Microsoft does is that when they pitch Copilot Studio is they will say, like, if you want to go further than this, then you can go all the way over here to this far other option here, which is an area called custom engine agents. And that's where you're saying, I want to build out my own agents over here on the right-hand side that I'm also going to own the entire AI stack. I'm going to be writing code. I'm going to need to be able to host my own model. I'm going to have to come up with my own orchestrator. Like we got two options here of semantic kernel and LangChain, but you're not limited to those. You can use whatever you want. You can use different AI services like the agent service from Microsoft Foundry or the Azure AI search service. Or you don't even have to use Microsoft Foundry. You could use AWS Bedrock or Google Vertex. And then what editors are you going to use? Well, it really depends. The big difference, though, that I want you to take away from here is that you can either extend the Copilot platform or you can own the entire stack. The farther to the right you go, I guess I'm being mirrored. So the farther to the right you go, over to the right-hand side of my slide, the more power, but the more responsibility and work you have to deal with. Right? You're also responsible for paying for all of the services you use and to hosting them. You don't need a Microsoft 365 Copilot license, though, because those agents will still surface inside of Copilot. You can still use them, but you don't need a license to be able to use these. Whereas on this side, you don't write any code because you're using, and you don't write any code, you don't have any services to host, because all of the stuff over here is extending what you already get as part of the $30 per user per month plan that you have for creating different agents. So where does my workshop fit into this? My workshop shows you how you can build agents using these declarative agents. And what we do is we go through a bunch of different scenarios here. I'm going to show you how to create these declarative agents for creating a PTO request. And we'll start off simple. We'll have just custom instructions. And I'll show you how we can do the exact same thing you can do in Copilot Studio, but instead with the declarative agent, where we today don't have access to things like topics or entities or variables, I'm going to show you can do the exact same thing a lot faster with just some good prompt engineering in a text file. I'm also going to show you how we can go filter the knowledge that we want to use down to a specific Word document and inside of our SharePoint environment. And I'm also going to show you how we can actually talk to different REST APIs to get real-time data, like the current user's PTO balance. I'll show you how to talk to the Microsoft Graph to get data from SharePoint. And all of this, I'll show you how to do all of this with no code. All of it is going to be done with JSON and YAML. That's it, and text files. Now, there is another option that you can do with this if you do want to have more of a more coded-based experience. There is a domain-specific language that Microsoft offers called TypeSpec. And what that allows us to do is to, instead of writing JSON and YAML and the text files, we write it out as more of like, it's like code. And when it compiles, it generates all of that YAML and JSON. And you find you write a lot less stuff. And you have a lot less like debugging and errors that you run into because you get the IntelliSense and like type checking as you're building out your app and writing out the type spec instead of writing out all JSON, YAML, text files, packaging it up, deploying it. Let's test it out and see if it works. All right. So in terms of like features and capabilities and limitations between these two, it is a there's a lot of overlap between what you can do on both of them. And there's a little bit of stuff on the outside of each one of them that's this one can do what the other one can't do. This one can do what the other one can't do. And there's a whole bunch of asterisks and decision points with that as well. So that's what my workshop is all about, is that declarative agents and being able to go through and to kind of slice and dice and show you how to build out agents throughout the day. So it's very much a guided workshop that you will sit back and learn from like a seminar style as I go out and build this agent. And then you get access to everything that I do throughout the entire day. The final agents that we build, you get access to all the slides and all of that stuff from my workshop. I know this little session goes on for about 30 minutes. So we've got a little bit of time here at the end. If you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and drop them in the comments. I'll keep an eye here and be more than happy to go through and answer any questions that may come up. But in the meantime, though, I do want to kind of run through and take a look at a few other things here in my slides that talk about different things that we can do and how we can extend it. One of the things that we can do with Copilot, I'll show you this, and this is true. This is kind of true for both Copilot Studio, but it definitely is true for declarative agents. The different ways that we can extend the M365 Copilot stack is that we can have our own custom instructions. So effectively prompt engineering to coach Copilot how we want it to behave for our scenario. I can also give it knowledge that is indexed ahead of time. So this is like, think large corpuses of content that don't live inside of Microsoft 365, like transcripts from courses or manuals or standard operating procedures that are in a separate like knowledge base or content management system. These are things that would need to be indexed and put into the index that are available to Copilot when the user has a question. The other option that we have is to teach it skills, and we also call them actions. So that's what you see here on the right-hand side. So for these, this is more like I'm building an action, which really is a REST API. I can leverage an existing one. So like in what we'll do through the workshop, is I'll show you how to use Microsoft Graph and others on coaching Copilot to go reach out to some external service to get data that is more real time, that has not been previously indexed. If I wanted to go through and to add additional content that is more unstructured, and I want to and upload it to the and make it available to my agent, I have this other option here about creating something called a Copilot connector. So that's taking all this content and giving it uploading it and ingesting it into Microsoft Graph, and which is then indexed, and I could use it inside of my agent as I see fit. I see here Mag said that you're booked for the session on Monday. And it's your birthday. Awesome, Max. You got to come. We're going to have to say happy birthday to you then. And so you say you look forward to seeing me there. I'm looking forward to seeing you as well. So it says Mags UK, but then you signed it Philip. So come up and just say hi and say I'm the one that saw you on, what is it, the January the 27th. during this little webinar. So that's awesome. Looking forward to having you join me. So that's what's cool about this then is that this is allowing me to do a whole lot of stuff with my with our custom agents, right? It's really this actions piece over here. This is your Swiss Army knife. Now, can I do this same stuff with like Copilot Studio? Kinda. You can leverage external APIs. You can leverage MCPs. I can do that also in with Declarative agents, and I'll show you how to do that in our workshop. But you can also do that with Copilot Studio, but you have access to the connectors and tools that they provide, or you need to get a developer to build a REST API for you to go get some additional data. We would do the exact same thing over in Copilot Studio or in Declarative agents. Also, when it comes to this piece over here about ingesting content, this is what this thing here is called the semantic index. So this is when you upload content or that is available inside of Microsoft 365, Microsoft indexes that content and stores it in a vector database, an AI-friendly database, we'll just call it that, called the semantic index. The way it does that, if you've heard these terms, it creates a bunch of embeddings and then saves those as vectors into this vector database. That's what lets Copilot find semantically relevant content. So when it never goes straight to graph to go look for your content, it goes to the semantic index because it'll give it semantic meaning. It has semantic meaning and relationships. But what it also does is it also is going to give us access to content inside of our tenant, right? When we have data that I want to be able to provide that's already going to be indexed, and I don't have, it's like very unstructured, flat content, like I mentioned, SOPs, manuals, transcripts. Like I do this for my courses where I take the transcript of my courses and I upload it so that I have a knowledge source in my tenant of all of my courses, which is great because then you could set up an agent, which I've done, that says I want to ask it a question about, like one of my students have asked me about SharePoint framework or Teams or building declarative agents. And while I know the answer to the question, I don't remember where I discussed it in a course. And when I ask Copilot that, and it has access to that knowledge now inside of the semantic index, because I've ingested these transcripts into the semantic index, it can say, here's the answer. And by the way, you talked about it in lesson 4 in this chapter of this course at about this time code. And I can give that back to my student to help them more easily access what they have access to. But not only that, that agent can also be smart enough to reach out to all of my customer database and find out if the person that's asking the question, do they even have access to that course, right? And so I could also say like, hey, this person, they don't have access to it. Here's where the answer is. You can give them the answer and say, by the way, I cover this and I have a demo on it in my course right here. If you're interested, here it is. And you can do a little like teaser of an upsell and just say like, hey, if you register for the course, you can get this and a whole lot more. These are the kind of things you can do with this platform, right? You have access to both of these things. And as I said, you also have access to being able to create custom instructions. There's a whole lot of stuff you can do with these, and your possibilities are really endless here. So in the workshop, while I have a whole bunch of plans of things that I'm going to show you and I'm going to run through, I have a whole bunch of slides, and I know I'm not going to get through all of them. I don't plan to get through all of them. They're just there as like, here's something that you can go look at on your own time if you like. There's a lot of additional resources that I make available to you, because a lot of this too is just a big conversation as well, right? So if you're coming to the workshop, make sure you come with like specific ideas or questions, and so that we can make sure that you walk away from the workshop with the answers that you need. And I hope to see you in April.
Hey, Andrew, thank you so much. That was a great overview of what you've, and my God, I to see you break it down into those first 4 areas that are part of Microsoft 365, and then build it yourself, do it yourself, put all the pieces and parts together. Thank you so much. That was brilliant. Thank you for joining us for this live stream. Again, if you this has been recorded and will live on the Microsoft 365 Community Conference website under Andrew's workshop. So if you have anything that you want to replay on this, please do check in there. That should be up later this week. In addition, we hope to see you at the live event, the real event in Orlando. And if doing so, please use Andrew's discount code, which is his last name, Connell 150, Connell 150. So have a great rest of your day and hope to see you in Orlando.
Bye, everybody.